coming to cover this statement, which seeks to clarify misinformation that was put out by the Honorable Minister of Energy, Minister Steuart. Now, before I go into the clarification, let me just make a couple points and put context to what we are about to do. We are about to clarify this misinformation made by Minister Young, and he is making that statement, peddling that misinformation to the general public and of course the world, because he is mandated by his government to defend an action that the government took in 2018, which brought economic ruins to Trinidad and Tobago. And therefore, the decision to close the Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago, shut down its operation in 2018, while claiming that they got expert advice. Nowhere from then to now and in the future can they point to who is this expert that gave them the advice to shut Petrotrin down. It was not Solomon and Associates who they engaged prior to the shutting down of Petrotrin in 2018. It was certainly not the Lashley Committee, which would have reviewed the operations and made recommendations for the restructuring of Petrotrin. And it certainly was not the Alphys Workers Trade Union who would have signed a memoranda of agreement dated April 2018 for the restructuring of the Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago. And why did we do that? We did that in the interests of the company and its stakeholders, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, to ensure that once restructured, Petrotrin will perform even better, and the country and its people will gain more from the improved and enhanced performance of Petrotrin. So, a decision was taken, which decision was driven by a number of factors, and you will be the judge as the time continues to unfold and events continues to come to the fore. You, the members of the public, members of the media, will be the judge as to why exactly they closed down the Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago. But one of the primary reasons was to get at the Alphys Workers Trade Union, to try to destroy the Alphys Workers Trade Union. Well, of course, we have seen that there's a God, and there's a God that we pray to that protect us in the Alphys Workers Trade Union, and therefore they will never get through with any plans like that. Never. So let's go into a bit of a journey to examine what they did and the effect. The effect of that immediately caused the sending home of some 5,000 to 7,000 workers, which would include permanent workers, members of the management, and also casual and temporary workers and contract employees and so on, who was on the direct and indirect payroll of Petrotrin's operation. Also, you would have seen us and heard us making the point repeatedly that the people in the adjoining communities, that is to say Marabella, Claxton Bay, Chagonas, and we go down to Lebre, Point Fortin, Cedras and Carcass, the Erin, and then we go to Santa Flora, Faizabad, and all of the fence line and adjoining communities where Petrotrin operation was in effect. All of those communities suffered. All of the service providers also suffered, and so on. Your stores, your malls, your groceries, your small traders, and so on, all of whom was connected to this major economic hub that is the Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago. So, in addition to that, the workers lose their medical plan, which was guaranteed by way of their negotiations and registered collective agreements. The retirees also lose their medical plan, which was a term and condition of their work, guaranteed for medical coverage for the rest of their lives on this earth, they and their named spouse and so on. Their pension plan continued to be in jeopardy. And so the country lose as a result of the reduction, the vast reduction in Petrotrin earning foreign exchange for the country. So you would have experienced, members of the public, you would have experienced from then to now an increase in the decrease, if one can put it that way, a reduction in your allotment to access foreign exchange. And for whatever reasons, whether it be medical abroad, or medical services, or material, or amenities, or whether it is education, whether it is travel, vacation, whatever it is, or products you want to purchase online, whatever it is, you, the ordinary citizen, were not having access to foreign exchange. And you would have to suffer the indignity of telling the bank where you're going and who you're going to and how long you're staying and all of those things to get, what, $200 US, or in some cases just to get $50 US from the banks. And that is simply because they just do not have available to them, the government that is, the central bank that is, they do not have available the foreign exchange that they would have had before. The country is earning less foreign exchange as a direct result of the shutting down of Petrotrin. The country is earning less foreign exchange as a direct result of the government's failed energy policy. And so we often know about these things and experience it, but we do not normally draw the connection with the failed government policy and the suffering that the masses, the people, are made to bear as a result of the failure of the government. That if there is corruption in the government, that corruption redounds to the suffering of the masses, because there would be less resources, less revenue to go around, while they corruptly place the revenue in the hands of their friends and their 1% business partner and 1% five business and election financiers and so on. And so whenever government fails with their policy direction, the people suffer. But very often, the people don't make that connection with the suffering they have with the failed government policy. But if it didn't bite you then, after it would have bitten the 7,000 workers, over 50,000 persons and so on, and all of those who were connected to the Petrotrin operation, if it didn't bite, didn't bite you when it bit them, then today it is continuing to bite in even more to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, because you now have increased fuel costs, removal of subsidy and so on, with more to come, because the government has to get revenue from somewhere, and they have to plow it from the backs and shoulders and the throats of the people. So property tax is going to come, and the threat of penalty, and all of those things are going to come simply because this PNM government, this Rowley-led PNM government, has failed economically and failed otherwise. But this morning we want to shine the light on their failure in the energy sector, which is the main driver of the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. Your Trinidad and Tobago, your Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. So they are given the job to maintain your standard of living, protect your welfare, the welfare of the citizens, and to increase and to betterment the standard of living. But it has gone backward, it's gone downhill, it has gone worse. And therefore it's like you are going downhill, blindfold, no brakes, no steering. But the downhill you're going is not forward, it is reversing. Could you imagine that? And that is where Trinidad and Tobago is being taken by this Rowley-led PNM government. And I often make the point that this PNM is unlike any other PNM in existence. And therefore, they do it with a level of arrogance, a level of vindictiveness, and as if they don't care. But even worse in all of that is that they insult the intelligence of the citizens of this country. And it is because they believe that, one, that we are forgetful people, and that before 9 days we will forget everything, or two, that we do not do the research for ourselves, and therefore because we do not do the research, their information is gospel. So he would tell that's the minister, that is, all of them would peddle misinformation, but this morning I want to single out Minister Steuart Young for the misinformation that he would have peddled sometime last week and of course earlier this week as carried in the newspaper. That misinformation cannot be left to be held as gospel. It has to be not challenged, but it has to be removed, and in its place ought to be authentic and real information. And so this morning we want to deal with two things. One, first of all, his statement with respect to the Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago and the misinformation around trying to have the citizens believe that all this pain and suffering that you are going through now, don't bother with that, because if Petrotrin was in operation, you would still be going through the same pain and suffering. In fact, you would have been going through more. So that they shut down Petrotrin, which gave the country all of the problems that I would have outlined just a while ago and even more. But I don't want that discussion at all. They don't want you to make the connection with the bad energy policy, the bad economic policies. They don't want the citizens to make the connection that, listen, if Petrotrin was in operation today, we would not have had to carry the additional burden of paying more for fuel, gasoline, kerosene, super gasoline, and so on. They don't want you to know that at all. They don't want that discussion. And as much as they don't want it, we will continue to have those discussions, because that is the reason why they cannot, they would not admit, but that is the reason why you have to pay more and more to come, more burdens to come. So we want to deal with a statement on the one hand that deals with the misinformation, disingenuous Minister Steuart Young, deal with that misinformation, and also deal with the infamous interview he had with CNN. Well, boy, I tell you, they really are insulting people. They just don't care what they say. So the Minister Young would have been responding to concerns, because everywhere we go, citizens are saying to us on the ground, listen, this government have us under pressure. Listen, we can't take it no more. Listen, it's real burden. They fail as a government, this Rowley-led PNM government. And this fuel cost, they should not have done that. If anything at all, the worst time for that is coming out of, we're just trying to recover from a lockdown with the coronavirus and so on, the pandemic. And they put more burden on the citizens. And they're coming now with property tax for the citizens. If there was ever a bad time, but these people are recklessly uncaring, they just don't care at all. So he tells the public, that's the Minister Steuart Little, that in Petrotrin days, when they closed Petrotrin, Petrotrin was paying $650 million annually to import crude. So he talks about what that crude import expenditure is, but he don't talk about what the revenue would have been after they would have passed the crude through various processes at the refinery, refined the crude, and sold products locally, extra-regionally, and of course in the region and so on. And all of the products that was sold outside of Trinidad and Tobago earned foreign exchange. But Minister Young seeks to focus on $650 million that Petrotrin would have required to import crude. And of course, because this country do not and never did produce the required amount of crude, the country, Petrotrin, always import crude. From its earliest incarnation of Textrin and Texaco and so on, it always imported crude to process at the refinery. Because the different types of crude that is required to make a diet of one major diet of crude for refinery processing is what will give you the type of refinery margins that would make it profitable. And therefore, Trinidad and Tobago do not produce the different quality of crude that the refinery would have required to have it operate optimum. And so Minister Young does not know, he does not have a background in engineering or chemistry or petroleum marketing. So he may not, and I think he does not, he's not familiar with the crude types and the different quality of products that comes out of those refined crude. And so to maximize the efficiency of the refinery, Texaco knew it, all of the incarnations of Trintuck knew it, and of course Petrotrin knew that. So importing crude was not an issue that the Prime Minister himself tried to make an issue, that Petrotrin had to import 100,000 barrels of crude every day, and therefore as a result of that we had to close Petrotrin. All of those things are misinformation. But of course we can give Minister Steuart Little a pass because his profession, by profession, is a lawyer. He's a lawyer by profession. But the Prime Minister is not a lawyer by profession, but he too peddles the misinformation. So you have this lawyer peddling misinformation to the public by giving the impression that $650 million of Petrotrin, of crude, was required by Petrotrin, and therefore that was unsustainable. This money I want to use as my source material, and I want to have, unlike Minister Steuart, I want to have the country know where I am getting my information from. Of course, quite apart from the fact that I'm very familiar with the Petrotrin's operation, I want to put on the table here this morning that the information that they would not give you, that Minister Steuart would not give you, that even Paria would not give you, that TPHL would not give you, that it had to be obtained through, thank God for the Freedom of Information Act, and therefore we force them to give information with respect to the operation of Paria and the operation of Petrotrin. And so there are two documents. One is circulating on social media, but I think that because it is not gaining traction and they would like it to disappear, because of that we pull it out for emphasis here this morning. I thank the person, one Ms. Lisa Premchan of Fishermen and Friends of the Sea, for requesting this information from the Freedom of Information, which forced the Ministry of Finance to give lie to what is being said by the minister. So one document comes from the Freedom of Information, and another document comes from one comrade, Anthony Dobson, requesting information, and we will make this available to you members of the media. And it talks about, this one talks about, it's come from the Freedom of Information, mandated Paria to respond, and this is coming now from Paria's legal designated officer, being compelled to respond, talking about the value of contracts awarded to one Kenson, Demas, and Trinity from December 2018 to the 31st of January 2022. It talks also about, it requests information with respect to the Petrotrin employees' pension plan from July to September 2021 and October to December 2021. It requests that information, and also it requested information, and note this one for the purposes of our purpose here this morning, clarifying information with respect to the products, refined products that Paria would have imported. The value of products imported by Paria for the period 1st December 2018 to January 2022, in US dollars. So we went to see from this document what Paria paid for imported products, which products previously the refinery would have produced. So we have a situation now where we no longer produce the products, which is what they do. They don't want this conversation at all. We no longer produce these products at the refinery. Our ability to do it, we were doing it all of the time, and the country was earning foreign exchange. But they shut down our ability to do that, and now they have to, well, they have to satisfy the motoring public here, and therefore they have to import that which they were producing here. That's the point. And I want to give you, not an idea, but I want to give you the cost, what Paria paid. So the 650 million is really meaningless if you don't put it against the fact that that was to bring in crude, process those different qualities of crude, and produce refined products for local sales and for foreign export. We get the point. So let us go on a little journey here. First of all, this document, and again I'm making the point that we will make this document available to you members of the media, so you don't have to request it from the Freedom of Information. We will make it available. This document says, and it's a Paria document now, responding to the request through the Freedom of Information Act. The value of products imported by Paria for the period 1st December 2018 to January 2022 in US dollars. 3.5 billion US dollars. Let that sink in a bit. In a situation where you have scarce foreign exchange, you now have to use your scarce foreign exchange to import fuel, because no motor vehicle, you'll have no cars running on the road. No economic activity will take place because you wouldn't be able to be powered, because you'll have no gasoline, you have no kerosene, you have no diesel, you will have no jet fuel to refuel jets when they come into our jurisdiction. Everything will come to a halt. Because they didn't consider, when their anxiety to hurt the OWTU, they didn't consider for one moment how they would be hurting Trinidad and Tobago. Such is the myopicness of Prime Minister Rowley. Get vexed, Mr. Speaker. Just get vexed, because the OWTU would have criticized their operation and their same failing to have proper policies in the energy sector. We would have criticized how they were running the country. So he get vexed, shut down Petrotrin to get at the OWTU, and of course other people benefited, and we will tell you about that. Don't forget the 100 million, and don't forget the 10-year contract that people got as a result of settlement in a matter that is not an investigation, still continues by the police. These days they settle matters even though the police have active investigation going on. That's a familiar thing with this Rowley government. So people benefited by the shutting down of Petrotrin, but not the people of Trinidad and Tobago. A few people benefited, but not the citizens. The citizens continue to suffer. So that is why it is so difficult for you to get Forex. Because while he talks about 650 million, let's do the math. 650 million for the 3 years would be what? That's using his figure. 650 million. 650 million for 3 years. Yeah. Right? So that's 1950. 1,950,000. And look at what they pay for the 3 years. 3.5 billion US dollars. And my point this morning is not that it would have made that, it would have made even more than that. But even by the straightforward calculation, it will show that for the 3 years that he is talking about, had you had Petrotrin importing this crude for 650 million for the 3 years, they still would have paid much less than what they paid to import fuel. You get the point? So this is an upside down government who just fool the people. But we cannot allow that information to stay out there. Because when he said that, he did not say what I am saying to you this morning, that Paria paid US dollars. Let's just let that sink in a little more now. It's US dollars. 3.5 billion US dollars for the 3 years so far that Petrotrin has been shut down. Actually, I rounded off, the figure is 3.5142749. So just over 3.5 billion to import fuel in a situation where you have very scarce foreign exchange. Yeah, so let's look at what Petrotrin would have exported in for export products now, finished products, refined products, 2014, 29 million barrels. I'm not now talking about the local market, I'm talking about what was sold. 2015, 34.2 million barrels of refined product. 2016, 44.2 million barrels of refined product. 2017, 36.9 million barrels of refined product. And of course, we know what happened in 2018. Now, let's put some other figures on the table. Subvention that the government had was to give Petrotrin subvention. And here we want to thank the Fishermen and Friends of the Sea for requesting this document, and it is on social media. We ask someone to look at it, but we'll make it available for the media. And this is coming from the Ministry of Finance, because the Ministry of Finance had to respond to this request for information. In 2016, subvention nil. 2017, subvention nil. 2018, subvention nil. So the misinformation about the government had to give Petrotrin subvention, take a look. Nil. In 2019, the government, note this, the Ministry of Finance, and I want to read directly from the document here now. It should be noted that payment by the Ministry of Finance in 2019 was to meet the cost associated with the closure stroke restructuring of Petrotrin. And that figure is 1.2 million TT dollars. Billion TT dollars, sorry. 1.2 billion TT dollars. So while Petrotrin was in operation, it did not require any subvention, but to shut it down, they went and found money now to associated with the cost of shutting down, pay the workers and all of that. So had you not shut down Petrotrin, not only that the government would not have been required to give subvention, they would not have been required to find that $1.2 billion. So that's vex money. Vex money, $1.2 billion. Send all the workers home. Mass up OWTU. Vex money from Rowley. And 169 million for servicing of its loans. I continue to read. Further, I'm advised that the payment made by the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industry, and that's a payment of 169 million, was to facilitate interest payment on a $200 million loan facility. Now, while Petrotrin was in operation, it continues to service its loan up to date. That's a fact. It never defaulted on its loan payment. That is a fact. I challenge the minister to say otherwise. So it was paying down its loan. But if you close Petrotrin in 2018, of course, by 2019, you had to make payment on your installment on your loan. And therefore, it is the Ministry of Finance now finding the money that Petrotrin would have found to pay its loan, taxpayers' money now to pay the loan, because you shut down Petrotrin, right? So that's vex money too. So you have over 2 billion TT in 2019. All of those things associated with the closure of Petrotrin and the paying of the loan. The problem was that they had to meet a bullet payment in August of 2019, but that had nothing to do with the bullet payment. That's a separate loan that Petrotrin had, that Petrotrin was paying its loan installment and so on. But if you shut it down, no revenue coming, the Ministry of Finance now have to find taxpayers' money to pay what Petrotrin would have been paying. And I also showed you just a while ago where Petrotrin received no subvention from the government. This is their own Ministry of Finance document that Minister Young will not talk about at all. So, and the cost of closing down Petrotrin continues to mount. That calculation is still being made. Final tally is not yet. But when you add into that the aggravation and the damages and the problems and the suffering that people made to suffer, you could never put a cost to that. And as I talk about the bullet payment as we speak, the question for them is, what happened to that bullet payment? Did they pay it off after the restructure? Because remember, that was a big problem. They still have not paid that bullet payment off. So you shut down Petrotrin to restructure so that you could pay off that bullet payment. They still didn't. And you know why? You know how we know that? Because the bondholders, they could not go through the sale to Patriotic because the bondholders stopped them and said, hey, you can't offer no kind of arrangement with Patriotic because what? You owe us. You need to pay that off. And therefore that is where that got stuck. And they would lie to you and tell you otherwise. So the point we're making here this morning is, if you didn't catch it as yet, is that Minister Steuart Little, Minister Steuart Young peddled misinformation, very disingenuous with the information. And it is an insult and an assault on the intelligence of the people, simply because they believe people too busy to go and check or that we are not privy to the information. But the OWTU cannot allow that misinformation to stay out there. And the documents that I'm quoting from is not OWTU's document or any referee document or made up figures. They come from the Ministry of Finance and they come from PARIA itself. So, a quick recap on that is that Minister Steuart Young, you need to desist from peddling misinformation to the country and the world. And that your misinformation of 650 million, giving the impression that that is the only factor in Petrotrin's operation, is totally misleading. And therefore, Petrotrin was, one, paying its loan, two, never receiving any subvention, as evidenced by this document. And the only monies that the government had to pay, taxpayers' money they had was to take and pay, is when they shut down Petrotrin and rendered Petrotrin unable to pay its debts, to pay its loan, and to operate. So they are responsible directly for that. But that the 3.5 billion US from then to now is a very, very telling and startling number. 3.5 billion US dollars to import fuel, which could have otherwise been produced here locally. And that is why they would strap on your shoulders now the issue of increased cost for fuel by the removal of the subsidy. And therefore we make the point for yet another occasion that while Petrotrin was in operation, you know, there's what is called the producing companies to pay this subsidy to the government by all of the producing companies, and including Petrotrin too, because Petrotrin, part of Petrotrin's operation was to produce crude, and therefore up to around 4% of gross income of those companies were to pay to the government for that would be used as subsidies for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, so that the people of Trinidad and Tobago will benefit from the salt of the earth, from the salt of their land, from the resources of their land. And this is according to the Petroleum Levy and Subsidy Act of 1974. So that when oil prices were high and Petrotrin was in operation, Petrotrin could have absorbed the subsidy simply because of the revenue that Petrotrin was making until the government could have afforded to pay that subsidy. Until the government could have afforded to collect the subsidy from all of these companies, and also add to that, if it was necessary, add to that their quantum to pay that subsidy so that the people will benefit. And just to give you an idea of that, that subsidy would have run as much as 4 billion TT dollars at one time. Yeah? 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 billion dollars TT. And Petrotrin would have absorbed that over a period of time. Because the cost of producing these products, gasoline, kerosene, diesel, super gasoline, premium, all of those, jet fuel, it would have cost Petrotrin more to produce those products, and they would have been mandated by the Petroleum Production Levy and Subsidy Act of '74 to sell it at a reduced price to the public. So Petrotrin pays more, spends more to produce it and sell it to the local public, to the NP and so on, at a reduced price. Government collects revenue from the oil companies and so on, levies 4%, subsidy levy from the companies, and add to that their own quantum and pays back Petrotrin later down the road. And at one time it got so bad that Petrotrin would have net off the difference between the taxes that they have to pay, the government, and the subsidy. I owe you 10, you owe me 10, and therefore over a period of time, we work that down. So it is a falsehood. It is wicked and mischievous for the government, through all of their agents, and especially through the honorable, especially through this honorable Minister Steuart Young, to peddle this misinformation that the government had was to what? To give subventions to Petrotrin, and also that the Petrotrin would have paid $650 million per year to import crude, and does not say, on the other hand, after refining that crude, what Petrotrin would make through revenue and the foreign exchange that Petrotrin will make as a result of that. Petrotrin was a net foreign exchange owner in this country, and no matter how they try to color or to prevent the public from remembering that, we want to remind everybody that had you had Petrotrin, the country would not have been in the problem that we are in now. You would have had more access to foreign exchange. It would have, more of that would have been available, because the little they have now, they are giving it to their friends in the 1%. And you cannot get access to that at all. You are not, the citizens are not the priority of this government. And therefore, you would not have had to pay extra for fuel at this time if Petrotrin was in operation. That's clear. So we want to put that information to bed and to have it go. In fact, we want to put it in the cemetery, that information in the cemetery, and bury it. That Minister Steuart Young misinformation. Right. So let's just talk a bit about the other issue, Minister Steuart misinformation. And he gets so brave talking, you know, after a while when you continue to tell misinformation, when people tell lies, after a while they believe it themselves. And they tell the Pope, they tell priests, they tell pundit, they tell rabbi, they will tell judges, they will tell everybody. Because in their heads, they believe the misinformation. So here's Mr. Young now telling the world through CNN, making particular statements. Well, I tell you, we are really in a bad place. Show me your leaders and I'll tell you where you are going. So, the resource material, again, I want to say to you this morning that we are using resource material from the Trinidad and Tobago Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative that captures all of the goings on, all of the activities in the energy sector and the extracting industries and so on, and all of the revenue, what they pay and which company pay what and so on, and also the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries Consolidated Monthly Bulletin. So it is pulled from right under the Steuart little fella. This is the ministry's information. It's not, you didn't see OWTU star on anything here. This is the Ministry of Energy information. And it is for the period January to December 2021. Right. So let's go through, and I would advise members of the media to go to the ministry's website, and you will get this document, and you can go through this document to verify what is being said here this morning. So first of all, we want to say that we were in shock. We were in awe. The country was in awe by the statement, that interview given to CNN, that says that Trinidad and Tobago could now be assisting Europe in the supply of LNG and natural gas and so on to reduce Europe's dependency on Russian gas. So Europe consumes, all of Europe consumes some 40% of Russian gas and LNG and so on. And because of the economic sanctions on Russia, they want to wean themselves off of Russian gas, Europe that is, want to wean itself off, but they don't know where to turn. But here comes Steuart Little, riding on a horse and says, hold it, Trinidad and Tobago is going to assist Europe to be able to have Europe take no gas from Russia. Trinidad and Tobago. Put us on the Russian radar, where Putin not even studying us. But Steuart here put us on Putin's radar by saying that, listen, he's going to, Trinidad and Tobago have enough to assist. We're going to do what we can, and so on. But here's the problem with that. For January to December last year, and I'm going into the Ministry of Energy's document now, there was reduced activity in the energy sector. In fact, for the last, since PNM came into office, from 2015, let's count the rest of 2015, 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. There has been a steady decline in the energy sector, production in the energy sector. So, a decline in gas production, a decline in crude oil production, and of course, a decline in LNG production. And therefore, when you go through this document and you look at the activities in drilling, workover, well completion, and so on, you will see reduced activity year on year, and this last year's reduced activities captured in this document show where, as a result of the reduced activity in that sector, less drilling, less workover, less completion, and so on, it is resulting in the decline in crude oil production and, of course, natural gas production. But here's the sting in the tail. Minister Young is fully aware that while he was given that interview, Atlantic LNG, I'm going now to the report. Atlantic LNG, of the 4 trains, only 3 is operational. And that train 1 has been off for all of last year. And as we speak here this morning, if from the time this press conference started to now the start of train 1, if that didn't happen, because the last time I checked is before this press conference started. So if in the half an hour or 45 minutes they started up, unless they did that, train 1 is still out of service. In fact, it appears as though they are preparing to mothball that train 1. They are preparing to mothball train 1. So while he is telling the world we are going to assist, all smiles and so on, I don't know who tell he to do that interview, but I tell you they believe in the lies. Train 1, where you gain all the Atlantic LNG, where you get your trains, 3 of the 4 is in operation. But let's just examine why. Train 1 cannot be operated because of a fall in the supply of natural gas, the feedstock. So you have less natural gas, you can't operate train 1. But you're telling the world all is nice and hunky-dory in Trinidad and Tobago. BP would have informed them, that's the ministry, that there is insufficient gas to operate that train 1, and therefore they were advised to not spend that $250 million to do refurbishment work on train 1 when you know you can't get gas to operate it. And when you know you can't get gas for the most uncertain period, you don't know when. So that's scarce money, don't spend it. But there was money to be made by their friends, the contractors. So a decision was taken, and those people who took that decision, they running free, they're okay, they spend taxpayers' money. And in here the Prime Minister will be talking on one side of his face about taxpayers' money, but he wouldn't talk about taxpayers' money. $250 million TT was spent on the refurbishment of train 1, and it's not operational, so it cannot make revenue to make economic sense. And they head into mothballing because they do not have the gas to run it. In other words, our country's natural gas production has fallen. And I don't know, and somebody please tell me, how when you have fallen natural gas, you can't even run your 4 train, but you're going to send gas to Europe, to win Europe off of Russian gas. These people really are insulted. In fact, they are raping the intelligence of ordinary citizens in this country. And it's time we stop them from doing that. So let's go to some of the figures to prove the point. We're not just talking, we're going into some figures. So, gas production. And members of the media, when you go into gas production, I want you to pay attention to these abbreviations: BOPD, MMBTU, MMSCFD, millions of standard cubic feet daily, and of course empty metric tons. So there's a ledger here where it talks about all of these abbreviations, so you can know exactly what we are talking about when we speak about BOPD, barrels of oil a day, MMBTU, millions of British thermal units, that's LNG is measured in that unit, and of course MMSCFD, that's the measurement used for gas, standard cubic feet per day. So let's go now. Let's go, and of course ammonia is measured in metric tons. So let's go now to the information from the Ministry of Energy. because we want to illustrate the decline. I'm not just talking about it, I'm quoting from the document. So, in 2016, you had 3,332 MMSC. 2017, 3,347. 2018, 3,006. 2019, 3,005. 2020, 3,000, and 2021, 2,005. So you move from in 13. Well, let's take it from when they came into office. From 16, the 3,003 to 2,005 standard cubic feet daily. That's your daily gas production that has fallen. And that's the ministry's figures. Let's go to crude oil production. In 2017, the country, total crude oil production, barrel of oil per day, BOPD, 71,000. In 2021, 59,000. So we're producing less gas and less oil as a result of less activity in that sector, obviously. And that fall or less or reduced activity is driven by government policy, or lack thereof, or bad government policy. So because of bad government policy, you have a direct correlation with the decline in natural gas production and of course the decline in crude oil production. And that's the ministry's figure. The ministry's figures that tells us that the country is producing less. But this is the same country that you're going to send gas and I guess probably oil to Europe. And so let's look at land. Let's disaggregate now and look at land production, heritage now. Offshore Trinma in 2017, 19,009, almost 20,000. In 2020, the last figures pulled in 2020 is 17,000. It's a drop. Land, 11,007 to 10,002. So that's a drop in production. Disaggregated now, the heritage situation, drop in production. So when you put all of those things, lease operator, farm out operator, and so on, what multinationals are producing, the country is producing less under this PNM government. And therefore, we again make the point that in the heritage situation, as compared to the Petrotrin ENP situation, that the shutting down of Petrotrin would have impacted the country's ability to produce crude. Less crude is being produced as we speak. Nobody asked Minister Steuart where you're getting the gas from. Nobody asked him that, I guess. But we want to, through you today, ask him where is he going to get gas to send Europe? Or is he going to get gas for Train 1 to operationalize Train 1? Here are the facts. I want to leave you here with some facts to resonate this morning. As we speak, it's a fact that Train 1 is not functioning. It's a fact that it's not functioning because there's less gas. As we speak today, there's less oil production in Trinidad and Tobago. The production has fallen. As we speak, another fact is that Minister Young misinformed the country and the world. That's misinformation. As we speak, another fact that existed is that Petrotrin would have financed itself, its loan and so on, and also paid for the subsidy, absorbed that subsidy, and allow citizens to not have that burden strapped on their backs and shoulders. That Petrotrin would have been earning foreign exchange, and the country would have had more access to foreign exchange. And on the converse now, the very limited access you have is a direct result of the situation being exacerbated by virtue of the fact that Petrotrin is shut down. But even more than that, that whatever scarce foreign exchange they have to purchase fuel in a situation where the country would have been producing its own fuel. So taxpayers have to bear that burden. That over the period from 2013 to 2018, Petrotrin contributed 16 billion TT dollars to the treasury. Let me say that again. That the same company that they are trying to justify their shutting down,
with OWTU right now.
they're shutting down.
Okay, I cannot talk to you now.
Contributed $16 billion to the treasury from 2013 to 2018. Source document, the TI report, and of course the ministry's website. Check it. The country is suffering from Petrotrin closure. And if the refinery was in operation, we would not have any need to import fuel. And let me just go finally to, again, the decline in LNG production as a result of the steady decline in natural gas production. So you have, in 2018, and this is measured in MMBTU, you have 772 MMBTU produced. 2019, 646. That's millions, huh? 2020, 533 million, and 2021, 341 million MMBTU, a decline of some 46.3% from 18 to 20 to the end of 2021. So that's your LNG production. So all what they are doing, it seems that they are just working to make sure that all our productive capacity shrink, decline, and that the country gets less. They don't know what they are doing. They really don't know what they are doing with this very important and vital sector of our country's economy. And our point this morning is that Minister Steuart would have peddled misinformation through CNN to the world, and of course he came back again and peddled misinformation to our country and again to the world about Petrotrin's receiving subvention and so on, and it was a strain on the government. If anything at all, Petrotrin would have assisted the government with revenue for the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. It's a fact. That is a fact. So we challenge him to go to his own figure. You know, the last time when we produced this information, he said that it is no secret, everybody know that. But everybody don't know that, Minister Steuart, because everybody don't go into the ministry's website and pull the figures. And that is why you would take the opportunity to fool the people. But if anybody could tell the world that we're going to send gas and LNG to Europe in a situation where we had 3 out of 4 trains running, then one going to mothball, and so on, well, that person perhaps is qualified now internationally to give information anytime, anywhere, and so on. The OWTU is saying this morning, we never did accept misinformation from any government, and we certainly not going to allow misinformation to be fed to the public without it being challenged by this lying, rowdy government. They are very restful government, you know, the rowdy government, very, very restful. They perhaps are asleep because they have been lying since they come into office. They have been lying, so they're well rested because they have been lying. Okay. So thank you very much for covering that, and any question clarification. I'll point you to the source or answer any question that may be requested of me here this morning. Yeah?
Just one thing, a little aside.
Aside?
No, a little, one other thing was, I mean, you made a little reference to it earlier,
Well,
property tax a little bit.
Yes.
You mentioned it a little bit. I wanted to ask you, well, besides that, do you have any thoughts on what the finance minister claimed earlier this week, that how we achieved this? I believe he called it about a 1.98 billion surplus instead of a deficit. Any thoughts about that? Considering what you said about how they've been managing the economy.
But they're playing smart with foolishness, eh? But whether they said that or not, the OWTU, like the rest of the trade union movement, says that Minister Steuart Young said to the world that they have bills to pay. And one of the most outstanding, indeed the most outstanding bills that they have to pay, bills dated back to 2013, 14, some as far as 2007 or so, 13, 14, 15. My point this morning is to inform you that the most important bills that they have to pay are bills owed to the workers through collective bargaining and negotiation, the settlement of those issues. And we'll have a special press conference to deal with that. So, whether he can see clearly now or not, I hope he sees the debt owed to the workers. They owe the workers for 2 and 3 periods of collective bargaining, and they must settle all of those negotiations and settle them now. We demand that. We will accept nothing less than that. And we are not going to accept 0, 0, 0. At all, at all, at all. 0, 0, 0 is not an offer. We're not going to accept that at all. Which is why I will remind you at this point, which is why the OWTU would have appealed the unfair decision handed down to the TNTech workers in a judgment by the industrial court. We appeal that. We're not going to accept it at all, at all. So, we will have a special press conference to deal with that issue. And so we want the headlines. We would like if the godly editors in the house, yes, those nice editors in the house, to not twist the story, but the headline to be carried in this issue is that Minister Steuart Young, OWTU says, Minister Steuart Young, for yet another occasion, fooled the people. He was disingenuous with the information. And I'm being very diplomatic and with choice words, disingenuous. Yeah? There are a number of other words I could have used there, but disingenuous I would use this morning, palatable for the media. Yeah? So those editors in the house, yes? We hope that they don't twist the story, but carry exactly what we say. And if they want to check, I again point to the source of information, the EITI reports, all of the reports and so on, all of them, those reports that captures what is all the activity in the energy sector and so on in the extractive industries. And of course the ministry's consolidated multi-bulletin covering the period January to December 2021, and of course that which we will give you a copy of, your kind selves, we will give you a copy of these reports coming from the Freedom of Information Act, yeah? Capturing what Paria pay, what the country pay, what taxpayers pay now in US dollars, and what we could have made had the refinery been in operation, and so on. Yeah. So, anything else that you would want to clarify here? The takeaway from here is that Minister Steuart fooled the country. The other takeaway is that we have had and continue to experience a decline in the energy sector, a decline in activities and so on, and as a result of that, a decline in production in the sector, crude oil production, gas production, and of course, LNG production. And that to remind the country that as we speak, Train 1 is not in operation. People forget that. Train 1 is, they are preparing to mothball that. Train 1 is not in operation. And these questions ought to be posed to the goodly minister when he comes around peddling his misinformation. Yeah? Yeah, so thank you very much for spending some time with us and going through. There are a lot more details in these reports, and this is why we would invite you to go to the ministry's website and get this, the Ministry of Energy, that is, website, and get this report. We'll give you copies of the letter that says that subvention for 2016, 17, 18 Petrotrin is nil, and the Ministry of Finance saying that. Yeah? And also saying that the taxpayers now, they take taxpayers' money to fund the shutting down of Petrotrin, which was not necessary if they had Petrotrin running. So everything wrong with the shutting down of Petrotrin, but they don't want that conversation at all, at all, at all. And anything that they don't want, but which is for the benefit of the people, we must want and we must give them. And that is why the OWTU is here, standing tall, giving you the information for yet another time. Thank you very much. Yes? I'm reminded to remind you to, in the document that we are going to give you that deals with PARIA, take a look at who benefited contracts in PARIA. In that document, take a look and see the name of the contractor and draw the connection between the contractor and the government, friends of the government, and so on. And which party that contractor is associated with traditionally from time immemorial. So one contractor would have gained over 124. Let me get it, let me single it out here for you. $126 million. One contractor. So when you talk about who benefited, not the people not benefited, but few people benefited. And that contractor, I wouldn't call the contractor name, you'll get it in the report. Benefited 126, almost 127 million TT dollars for the period since they shut down Petrotrin to now. Walk in just so and get that contract. Yeah? And you'll see what that was for. And another one, 161 million. You want to know who benefit? And of course, that is not to mention, and that's just in PARIA, that's not to mention what is happening in Heritage. Because those contractors are also in Heritage. So this is just PARIA. And also, the numbers is what is the particular service that they are providing to get this contract, and how did they get this contract if it was in 2018? Did they tender? Was that put out for tender? How did they land this lucrative contract? And of course, that does not include the 100 million settlement that another person got, plus 10 years guarantee. Oil and certain parts of the field. It's Trinidad and Tobago. It's taxpayers' thing. Taxpayers' assets that we're talking about. This is not P&M or Rowley or Steuart Young's asset. This is the people's asset that these people are taking, dividing up and sharing up among themselves and their friends and so on. That is our reality today as we speak. So we will make these documents available and so on, that you can do your own perusal. And of course, we ask those editors in the house, up in the house, those kind editors in the house, to just publish in the interest of the public and the taxpayers and your customers who buy your newspaper. Just publish the truth, as we would have put it out here this morning. Thank you very much again.